It's just kind of, I mean, literally, I know I'm old, but I have a hard time, I'm having a hard time hearing it too, so. So, Leonard, do you want to go ahead?
All right, well, where do you want to begin, Chris? Okay, did you have a financial proposal?
No, we do not actually, because we are still trying to cost that properly and preventing regressive bargaining. So we didn't want to come in with, to stop regressive bargaining, some crazy high proposal, and then if we come in lower than we're anticipating, what we are going to talk about is what. So your last proposal for 2 years, we were anticipating that would be a similar proposal today for 1 year. And so we understand that's to raise the base and apply this. Leapfrogging is still an issue that the teachers really want to address. And so again, even with the same pot of money, there is the concept of allowing people to migrate on steps closer to where they should be, and then applying some funds as well as you're doing to the base and not the base. So that's where we're at with the compensation piece. Is that a correct assumption of your financial proposal?
Okay, so do you have any leapfrog language?
No, we do not, because we're trying to cost it out correctly before proposing it, and which we were not able to complete before today.
I would say that until we get to 47.5, we're not going to be able to address this problem because it's illegal to do so. Because it's 90%. But I mean, our goal is to try and get to 47.5 soon, but we're not getting 47.5 under our current distribution this year. And so we would be in the same position as we were for the 22-23 offer that was part of the initial 2-year offer that took place a couple months ago, sort of where we stand. I think that offer was around $6 million. And so when we put it back in your court to say, how do you want us to
Right. So I'm going back explaining that, but part of like with Westville, why I didn't want to spend 4 hours costing it out to literally hear what just happened, right? But when is this our understanding and yours and Leonard's that when we hit 47.5, at that time we can go more nuts with other stuff, or do you have to wait for the next bargaining session?
Well,
next year.
once we hit 47.5, we have that. The rule changes.
175.
It's 100 to 75%. So we get a little bit of freedom. And we're, quite honestly, we're hoping that as all of the districts start to get to 47.5, that they'll take off some of the parameters, some of those restrictions around how we can negotiate the spend of this money, right? But as it stands right now, it's written into the legislation that we have to apply the 150% rule until we get to 475, and then after that, it's 100% to 75%, which will allow us to address some leapfrogging at that point in time, but not in big chunks because.
So is it an average increase to the non-base people that triggers the base increase, or you can get random?
It's the highest amount given to a grandfather that triggers. So like if the most senior person within your unit was a grandfathered employee, they got $1,000 as part of it. That's just a random number, round number. Then we would have to raise the base by $1,500. Everyone at the base would get $1,500 until we get 475. And then at that point in time, we can switch the parameters to 100% acceptance.
Right. So let's say that was Kim. But then you have someone else who's newer, like maybe Sarah. Could she get $900 because you're just hitting it to the maximum, right? And then can people get less than that maximum?
There's two categories. There's the old 80% category and the 20% category are gone. The same people are in the 50% category, which is new hires and classroom classroom teachers defined by statute 112, I think, 222, 2A. I'll get that statute. It's the same statute we're dealing with the classroom teachers only and full-time pre-K teachers funded by the FEFP. Those folks spend 50% of the amount to get the base as high as you can, as close as you can to 47.5. And then everyone else who does not get a raise or gets less than a 2% raise, I believe, goes into the other 50% bucket that used to be a 20% bucket. So there's more money available for that.
Okay, so it is possible to have some differentiated salary, but meticulous then to potentially do. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, it's possible to have a more differentiated salary. It just becomes more difficult as you're accommodating those restrictions.
Yes, I think it'd be, there's a lot of rules, so that's just a piece of rule.
Right.
And then you have the 150% rule that I believe applies when you spend general fund money. So that's the 150% rule. If a grandfather teacher gets $1,000, the new minimum base teacher gets $1,500. 150%. Then you have the performance pay rule, not 25%. Highly effective. Even all the annual contract teachers get 25% more than anyone else who's highly effective performance. If you haven't.
Right.
So essentially, we're working within the same parameters that we were.
Right.
Previously. The amount of money has not changed. It is a significant amount of money, quite honestly. It's one of the largest amounts that we've had in recent history, but it's, it's $6 million.
Okay, thanks for those details. All right, so otherwise, we're gonna just go down this list. It's gonna be a bit similar to the Leicester situation, since I think we were all here, in that we are, we work a lot in labor meetings. I think we're doing a lot of good work in there, actually. And obviously, as a sidebar, after our Leicester bargaining, we were at a little meeting and people brought up stuff, and it was like, we don't have to bargain now, we just have to talk to labor about that to fix stuff. And I think we're doing good stuff there. So a big part about today is to be getting on the same page with what our goals are and what we're trying to do in the language, because we do understand you're going to have a lot of restrictions from the district end, whether your system is providing it or whatever it is. And so the idea is that at the end of today, we're both going to know, we're going to tell you what articles are opening, what we're trying to do there. Tell us if there's restrictions so we don't waste time going down the wrong rabbit hole. And then again, try to wrap this up in only a couple more short bargaining sessions, leaving today knowing where everyone's at. And a big part of that is it's not a back and forth like a normal bargaining session. It's going to be a lot of just understanding what we're dealing with day to day, but an opportunity for you all to explain what you are dealing with every day in terms of that's not possible because of our computer system. We're not tracking this, whatever it is. So we understand the district's constraints. I think a lot of I don't know what words to use. LCTA and district headbutting is potentially from just not understanding stuff. Simple miscommunications, people don't understand the reality of what the other side is dealing with every day. So I provide today an opportunity to understand that. I think we did that in the last meeting, and they understood a lot more of what the district has to deal with. So to that extent also, I'm not in the classroom. You didn't know they're in the classroom. And so I'll bring stuff up and then have them explain to you what the issue is, why it's an issue, and where we're trying to solve it. Okay, so Article 7 is one that we're going to open. This is professional assignments and working conditions. And the first item of concern is Compton consistency, rollover, and potential use as second person leave. And Martina is going to talk a bit about that.
So basically, we just wanted to address that all sites don't necessarily allocate compensatory time. And it should be announced to all staff that the opportunity exists to earn it. Also, we wanted to look at into more flexible ways of utilizing the compensatory time, because the way it stands now, it's only allowed to be used when there's no student contact, days like today, like a plan day, where it's not as beneficial as it could be during the regular school year. And to also have compensatory time tracked in Skype, to make that very, very simple for the staff as well as administration, as well as the district, to just be able to look at any time to see what was earned, what's remaining, and that alleviates a lot of questions and confusion.
So part of that is the previous settlement comp time that is being allowed to use that way. This is something that teachers are wanting across the board. And as we hear from different people, something that I'm thinking about is what they're explaining to you is the issues they have that are making it difficult for them to do the day-to-day work of educating students and all that. And so what they're also on the same point saying is this is what makes us want to stay here and what will bring people in. To actually teach here, hearing about these benefits, that they're going in the right direction. Okay, so the next item is related to ESC teachers, specifically IEP prep time. Also, this is Patty.
Yes.
So, for
Go ahead.
clarification, is there a specific article in 7 or a provision of 7 that you want to look at?
We had a lot of proposals last year on Article 7, when they those are still an issue.
Yeah, are you planning on bringing those forward?
So I'm looking at the one from last year. We're gonna probably not every issue forward, but compensatory time, 7.04, definitely just bring forward. Hopefully by the end, you'll see each individual thing we intend on bringing forward.
Okay.
Next.
Yes.
Okay. So currently in the ESC, in the teacher contracts, ESC IEP prep time and meeting time is not currently in there. So we either are doing all ESC writing at home, or having meetings after school or during our planning or during school day, which affects student instruction, the quality of student instruction. And a minimum of at least 100 hours, depending on the school, depending on the class size, depending on the severity and nature of the students. So current contract language does not allow for any of that prep time.
You need to allow for compensation for that.
Well, there's no time to either, if it's during your planning, that is supposed to be reserved for meetings and or instructional planning. And then the rest of the day is used for instructional time. So there's no other time during your contracted hours to do any kind of IEP prep time. And depending on the disability and the severity of the student and the complexity of the child's needs, it can vary anywhere from at least an hour and a half to up to 5, 6, 7 hours to just write one IEP, considering the number of people that are involved in the meeting, such as OT, PT, behavior services, outside agencies, including regular ed teachers. And like I said, it's quite involved depending on how severe the child is and how many agencies and services the student is getting. And accommodations. And the research and the prep time also includes, for example, if we have a new staffing or reevaluation, that in itself, some evaluations are more than a few pages that you have to process, read, share with the team. So there's pre-planning and pre-meeting to discuss what for example, there's a child that is on the verge of going from one path to another path, for example, from a regular path, general education to an access curriculum, or from one school to another school, and having to just schedule meetings with articulation meetings, having to schedule with multiple schools from middle school to high school, elementary to middle school. That also involves scheduling time. And as you know, everyone's schedules are quite busy, so it takes a long time. Scheduling is probably one of the hardest parts next to writing the IP, because you also have to research the feedback from all the staff members that are included into the meeting and how that's going to progress for the next plan. Make sense? So it's quite lengthy, which is there is absolutely zero time in the contract or in your school day as it is to schedule that.
It seems like 100% of your IEP prep time is outside.
Oh,
of
it's
class time.
100%, yes,
Because the planning is just regular planning for you.
exactly. Because planning is left for a meeting, 1 day of meeting, and then the rest are in theory for instructional for the students. So it's 100% of my time is used, my free time is used for, or not even free time, personal time. My home time, my kid time, my family time is used to plan for IEP meetings, to schedule IEP meetings.
So we know these are required services to provide to the students, and there's a limited amount of people, but compensating them, because the idea is there would be more people to write the IEPs, help the students, cover during class time, so you could write the IEPs, that it's gonna be difficult to retain people as this keeps getting,
Yes,
you're getting more IEPs,
Yes.
the IEPs are getting longer to write, and so compensation will go a long way to recognize that.
absolutely, especially when you consider that some of the schools that are more attractive to potential employees are having to re-advertise repeatedly for positions in ESC. So we're, exponentially losing people and exponentially, and unfortunately, no one's really applying for these positions. Yes, ma'am?
So in section 7.14, it says that site administrators should make a reasonable effort to assist in preparing for IEPs, and it may include securing a substitute to enable the employee to prepare these documents during the workday. So what you're saying is
That's
that's not happening.
That is not happening across the district in a consistent fashion. And when you do have a sub, it does not always apply for some. OT, they can't get a sub, PT can't get a sub, SLP can't get subs, and that would then go against legal stance of providing service for these children. And it is expected as a legal requirement to provide so many hours and minutes of services per their IEP. So some of those subs, you can't get a sub for an SLP. You have to actually, they have to do their own work. Any questions?
In terms of compensation, what are you looking?
At this time, I think we need to gather what ESC teachers are in fact doing across the county, because it varies from my school. I have 18 kids in my 18 full-time ESC classroom versus, let's say, chairs that may have 4 kids in their classroom, but they're going desk every minute of the day. Versus somebody at Pine View and middle school and high school, it varies significantly. So we would have to do a little bit of research on how to properly request for it to be fairly and equally distributed.
We talked about tying it to the number of IEPs that the teacher has.
And the levels,
And the levels of the IEP.
yeah, severity of the levels and the matrix.
That they're placed into, and that could be a fair judge of the amount of time that goes into it.
And also in considering the number of services. So if a child is just an academic, if it's just under curriculum, obviously if I just have to present information for academics, it's a lot easier than presenting information, parent information for a child who requires curriculum, social, emotional, independent functioning, behavior services, health services, communication services. So it definitely varies the nature and severity of the child, how much prep time, how many people will be involved. And if it's an articulation meeting where a child may be qualified or better served in 2 different schools, those people have to be involved as well.
I'm assuming that you guys will do the appropriate research.
Yeah, and proposal on the table. We just did not, we still think this could be very helpful. We don't have that, because where we're at, what we're gonna propose, probably something tied to IEP, and it's a chance for you to tell us, well, actually, that information doesn't exist, so you're gonna run into roadblocks there.
I would say as you're putting your language together, just think about the operational reality of implementing it. So if you're going to do a per IEP, per level, how would that be tracked at a district-wide level and maintained so that if a child moves from one classroom to the other, we're going to be then taking it away from one teacher and giving it to another. And so while understanding that the complexities are there, just thinking about if there's a way to simplify your offer in terms of.
Do you mean like by FTE, by having a consideration for October FTE and then January, February FTE?
I just mean. to
Would
think
that be something
about-
that'd be feasible to you?
It's not as individualized in terms of the individual students, because that would be incredibly difficult to actually implement in a fair and consistent way.
Are there natural groupings of IEPs and students?
There are, well, the FTE
Class.
would, the FTE in October and January would determine how many minutes or services or matrix numbers will be allotted for each individual teacher.
I'm sure that you, so I'm not trying to brainstorm necessarily right now unless we want to get into this issue, but just, it was just more of a generalized
Yeah,
statement
yeah.
of,
An ask, we can definitely,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
to make it as simple as for you guys to not
Right.
micromanage every little.
well, and not
Okay.
end up with the teacher not getting compensated fairly.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, because changes do happen within an academic year, so to keep that in mind as well.
Right.
So a teacher's pay isn't set at one level, and then when those IEP changes happen in terms of placement, I think that's what you're referring to, that
It's an
It is.
adjusted, yes.
it wouldn't be adjusted that way, so
Mhm.
that's helpful, I think, for us to consider.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so next item is we're interested in some lively language.
Yeah,
There is-
so, at our site, a lot of the stuff, that I've kind of put together, that me and the members at my site have put together is, just some basic, languages to kind of preserve how our site operates. There's nothing in the contract that literally locks down how we're running our site. And so the worry is for my members and I, an administrator coming in and completely just changing how that site runs, how the day goes. Because right now we're on a 4-day week, and our 5th day is a planning period. But we work with adults, so that runs a little bit different. We're still underneath the K-12 umbrella as well, so there is some kind of our site's just not really tied down. So that the idea is to get some starting language in there, just to kind of lock in how our sites ran. That's pretty much it.
Can I ask just,
Yeah.
what it, when you say how your site, how it's locked in, because y'all are a separate animal altogether.
That's what I'm
Your funding
And that's what I
and
mean.
your
It's
students.
correct. And that's what I'm saying. It's just, it's not there in the contract as far, I think Lively is 2 sentences in the contract as far as we're referencing post-secondary. And because of that, we can have an administrator that comes in and just decides to change it to a 5-day-a-week school. We're working on Saturdays sometimes with our night programs. We have, so it's just ran a little bit different. It's not anything to like really lay out the entirety of what that culture of that site is. It's just to get something in there that we can start working off of.
We'd have to get feedback from Lively on that.
Right, that-
Because you are a post-secondary program. You do have K-8, but you get FTE, but those teachers, most of those teachers are in a high school for the most, I mean, you provide a teacher. I'm just trying to, because y'all are so.
And that's the animal that we're trying to tackle, is that's it. The fact that we are just so different.
Right.
I would want to just get something in there, more dedicated language, more dedicated
Yeah, I
language.
guess we
towards-
have to get some input from Shelley.
Yeah, and my members and I, we've already kind of talked with her about that, got her input on it as well. So it's a site-wide effort.
Our intention is to put that as something like 7.02F. E is Leon County Schools virtual program, and so we would add F for Lively.
That would make more sense than. Really can't.
Right, yeah, we're just, yeah.
All right. So another thing in Article 7, student contact time, we're in arbitration for that now, so I don't think there's much to say, and we'll have to get clarification through that for now. All right, we proposed last time some backpack language, which is where a teacher is absent and the class gets split up between 200 teachers, that some amount of money would be assigned to those kids to go with them when they split off with other teachers, because a sub. And Dr. Wood is gonna talk about that. Dr. Wood.
Good afternoon. I think some of the issues with the splitting of students and, sending them to different classes, a teacher has to take on that responsibility of, watching someone else's kids and not being compensated. And even when the classes are not split up, some teachers are concerned about giving up their planning periods to watch another class, and they're not being compensated for that at home. So some teachers are not even getting their planning period when they have been assigned a planning period, when they can't find a sub. So that's something that needs to have a little bit more consistency. If you're going to ask a teacher to give up their planning periods, I think you should also compensate them in some way. And I think some schools may be giving a teacher, comp time or what have you, but it goes right back to consistency across the schools. That is one of the things that is definitely an issue that has come up.
Part of it, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around, is I understand this district and site-based decision model, and that inevitably ends up with some sites essentially not recognizing comp time, because most places in the contract say they can't award it. Then you have other places that do, and so it's like, we have a directory for incoming employees. That's like, this is a good site where you can get comp time, and this is one where they just don't offer that. That's not something I am particularly interested in doing, but it is that they're feeling the pressure from across the district. Oh, you've got a good site, you get comp, you get paid for working, more or less is the attitude. Where other sites were not even acknowledged with comp time, which people, some extent view the comp time as, well, I can only use it without students, it doesn't roll over. And then they're still like, I'm not even getting that from my site principal. So the consistency goes a long way there. Or to the point also, is you were arguing to pay a sub something. And so it's not really an additional cost if you started to basis the sub pay and split it up. The idea is that each kid would have a dollar amount with them, and they take their backpack of dollars with them to the next class. So if it's 7 here, 5 there, 12 there, they get a proportional amount, they can class to. And so I know we proposed this last time and it was just wholly removed from the entire contract. We're going to propose it again. I don't know if it's understanding. Okay. So additional planning. Scott's going to talk about this one.
So some of the things we've been talking about with not just contact time, but protected planning, duty, things that kind of push into the ability of the teacher to address the needs of students while they're on campus and in their job. Like Patty said, taking things home more often. That it costs more. There's been some logistical issues of adding planning days, because then you have to get coverage for students, because parents need to make sure that they have daycare, all that stuff. So one of the things that's been used in a lot of schools is that kind of wonderful Wednesday model of where substitutes would be provided for the instructional staff for planning purposes. And so, in that kind of model, it's sub pay, it's not teacher pay. Parents aren't inconvenienced. You still get more time to deal with the paperwork and the things that need to be done logistically. And so that is something that, in order to give people more planning time, prep time, that this is an opportunity or option. One of the things that kind of thought about that we'd like everyone to consider is, the idea of maybe partnering with outside agencies like the Foundation of Leon County Schools, and rather than principal for the day, do something where we have like substitute for a day or teacher for a day, and build a pool of individuals that from the community could also learn more about what schools are like, to create some context and some collaboration with outside agencies and elected leaders and citizens. So there's a way that this would kind of just not get more planning, but also build some understanding of what our public schools are dealing with.
And even district personnel.
Right, so part of that is elected leaders, and we can get right into the class together. But also, I will tell you, there is one county in the Panhandle I know of where they let the service unit director go sit in on the class, and Suffolk as well. I'm not throwing myself on the sword here, but
Kristen pre-K?
from higher ed to pre-K.
Yeah.
because I'm not in the class, K-12 classroom, I could benefit by being in there for a day, and maybe some people in the district who came from different places, non-classroom backgrounds could be the same. Same with elected leaders, commissioners, whoever, and there are a lot of counties that do have things like this, so it's something we're interested in.
Yeah, my superintendent does that every month.
How do they pick who they do class for? All right, so I think that is it
Yellow James.
for, yeah, that's it for our Article 7, what we anticipate going to that. So we're also gonna open Article 8, which is class size, class load. Pamela is gonna talk to us about class size and caseload counts.
So for class size, it sounds like right now the district's using a average model. And that is creating quite a difference in what we're seeing as our class sizes. As an elective teacher, my class sizes can be a lot larger than maybe a standard English or math classroom. My classroom's a little bit larger than most standard classrooms. So I teach in a computer lab. And so they just put a lot of seats in there. And so what would be considered a full section for an English or math class is not considered a full section for one of my classes. And so that does create a disparity on, well, now I've got 35 seats in my room and I've got 35 kids, and then other classes are down to 15 to 20 kids, and that's considered a full load for them. So that's kind of what we're looking at, is how do we create a balance there, or we readdress what the class sizes are district-wide. In high school, it's a large problem. There's 2,000 kids to accommodate, and when we take away teaching units, the class sizes continue to grow. We saw a large grow this year across electives in our class sizes. And Martina also, yeah.
And if I could just add to what Pam was saying, she was mainly speaking from the elective side, but in the core classes, average size, math class 25, that's not the case. And when you have more than 25, we have like 30 students in a level 1 math class in every section. And those students, the majority of them have IEP, they're not getting what they deserve.
They're legally required to,
Right.
in some cases.
And so a lot of that, you have to deal with behavior management and things of that sort. It takes a lot of weight. So the idea of those math classes being 15 to 17 students is non-existent.
Yeah, because there's some classes that are that low because they're maybe an AP calculus class, so they're a lot lower. They bring our average down, but then you've got your lower level classes, the classes everyone needs to take to graduate, that shoot your averages back up because our classes are just so large because they are required to graduate or to get to the next level of math or English, whichever it may be.
So even if it's like a personnel issue where we can't really break it up, if there's some type of compensation or something, once you get beyond that regular class size, something, because you're putting in more work and you're dealing with a lot more.
And if you're pulling teachers for other assignments, teachers on special assignments, then someone else has to pick up that teacher's load. But that teacher is still on assignment with teacher pay, but they're not actually having students every day. So that also causes class sizes to go up as well.
And I was gonna add to that too, from the elementary perspective and also from the ESE perspective. So at the elementary school, we also obviously have to deal with the classroom sizes being determined based on that averaging out. That does cause some challenges for teachers. For separate setting classrooms that are the ESE classrooms that are separate setting, they might have lower numbers. They could only have, 4 to 6 kids in the lowest level class or the most severely impaired class. And then, maybe 10 or so in the next level. But then that throws off the averages for the gen ed classrooms at the site. So then we're not seeing the class sizes really reflect the needs of the students, whether it's a general education student or an ESE student, or, the various levels that are, you all know that are according to their matrix level, right? Or their least restrictive environment. We have the great variety of students to represent everybody. And we wanna help do our best to meet all of their needs, no matter what they are. And I think that that is a big concern because, it's not always working out in a way that benefits the students to the maximum level. And like we've been talking about too, that does create an unequal amount of work for the teachers depending on the situation. And so there's a lot of kind of detailed issues that is causing that we hope to discuss and look at more closely with you all this year during this process of bargaining. And then kind of more focusing more specifically on the ESE side of things. LCTA feels that we're really at a point where we need to more seriously discuss caseload caps for ESE teachers and service providers and kind of those special specialists who aren't quite a classroom teacher within the district. I think considering a caseload cap that considers the totality of the workload is very important. And that goes back to what Patty was talking about before, how some students, if they have greater needs, that means in terms of all of the like IEP paperwork and prep for that, that's a greater amount of burden on the teacher. But then just day to day, the greater the need, naturally, the more involved the teacher and all the parapros need to be for that one individual student. And it just is kind of a compounded issue where it's like a snowball effect. So those caseload caps that consider workload is an important area for us to look at. And we're thinking, for ESE teachers, even the resource room teachers or separate setting teachers, SLP, OT, PT, but we also have school psychologists, the behavior specialists at the district level, the compliance specialists at the district level, and the LATS team as well. I think we have 3 LATS people, the local assistive technology specialists, and they also have very, very large caseloads that they're trying to manage. So there's a lot to discuss in greater detail with you all relating to that this year.
I know we have 8.05 language to enforce that. It's like at every site. And so, okay. I'm not trying to find all those grievances and trying to improve the situation. So that's why we bring this to your attention that our employees do have concerns about class size problem. I don't want to have like 100 meetings about it necessarily with all the different principles because it's so.
We want to meet the spirit of the benefits of the class size.
Yeah, exactly. And so one thing I'm kind of hearing is I wonder if median instead of mean is a better way to measure that, because then you would have a real center data point and the top and bottom wouldn't mess with the averages so much. Because for every IEP that's taken 7 hours, you probably have one that's taken 15 minutes or something. You have some on the year.
No.
15 minutes.
An hour. I went too far now.
Yeah.
1 hour to 7.
I would say an hour. Yeah, and I think it really also saves the county, it also saves the county and the district and the taxpayers when you take into consideration if something is done effectively and with thought process and thoughtfulness, then you have less advocates having to come to the schools, less district personnel having to deal with attorneys, advocates, due process that are occurring that costs money every single minute of those meetings. We can avoid those.
We can all agree there are too many attorneys.
Oh yeah, I keep
Yes.
forgetting about you. Larry.
Hey, Leonard.
So one of the issues is also we're down 2,000 kids. There's a new charter school opening up that has been slotted for 400 students. And so we are losing students as well as having class size issues. So it's been an age-old problem of staffing and how do you calculate class size. It's not the same size per subject.
So Leonard
It's just the
Rocky
way they
had
say it.
agreed to doing exit interviews at one of the town halls to find out where and why kids are leaving. If money is an issue, we really should proceed with implementing exit interviews for, because no one's gonna leave a happy home. So we need to figure out why our kids are leaving. Is it because they see shiny grass on the other side, or because they're upset and we're not efficiently, you don't know this?
No, But,
do.
no,
I see you nodding.
no, because the 2,000 kids we lost was during COVID. We know how we lost those kids.
Did you ask them?
Oh, no, I haven't called each one of them individually, but looking at the data that we have as to why we lost them, they went to private school because of COVID. They haven't come back since COVID. That's our problem.
I can personally attest that several of those kids did not leave because of COVID.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying each and every.
But I mean, we
That's
do need,
okay. That's, no, never mind.
But to your point, it was COVID related, like they didn't want to follow this COVID rule in public school or something, right? And so those are maybe the root causes that if those have changed, is that a pathway to bringing kids back? I don't know, but
I know we have spent dollars on going to find these kids and talk to these parents. So we're not ignoring the fact that these kids are gone. Some have left the state. They bet. But forget us.
they
They
really.
just have so many, they have a lot of choices in their county. In some counties, there are no choices. It's the public school and maybe one private school that serves 4 or 5 counties. Here we have a dozen private schools where they're allowed to get vouchers and they don't even have to attend. And they can just take our money and it's called family retirement.
Right.
And we all suffer. So we get the issue. We understand how important it is, class size. But it's also, it's a real issue that these charter schools keep open, taking millions and millions of dollars that we could be discussing how to spend.
So in that same line, Becca is going to talk about pre-K matrix placement.
Yes. So one of the most difficult things about pre-K is in the past, we have just gotten students sent to us. We haven't even had access to their IEP. So we have no idea if we're getting a student who's nonverbal or a student who is potty trained. And last year, Scott and LCTA worked with Brooke to get us invited to the staffing so we can at least hear the IEP and meet the parents and know kind of at a school site, like, okay, he needs to go in your class because I already have 2 that are, this high level need. But the problem is when they come from pre-K, 99.9% of them just come with the developmental delay label. And there are some that have far more severe needs or disabilities like autism, for example. And in our case, like when we were talking about class size, class load, the matrix may be a 251 or 252. And we can't even have them tested with our school psychologist or anything until their second year, the year before they're going to kindergarten. That's spring. And then you get them and then they get placed into a separate class. Then their matrix level goes up because they're getting everything they needed. So if we were to do something based on matrix level or severity, pre-K would be not represented correctly, if that makes sense.
This I'm not even sure where to put it, honestly, but we know it's an issue with this matrix.
You're including as part of that.
I think so, but again, does that tie into class load based on their matrix placement? I think 8, but again, I'm not going to propose something that makes no sense, so we're talking about it here. Is matrix placement somewhere else in this contract? Anyone else?
We're talking about it in relation to 7.14 about the IEP prep and the.
Well, IEP
Yeah,
and then the class size, class load.
Okay.
So that's the kind of intersection of that. It's
Okay.
clear if it would be 7 or 8.
And pre-K is kind of like livelihood. We're a whole different entity, but then we're also included in ESE and all these different things. So yes, more. Well, I guess pre-K kind of has things they tell the pre-K teachers, but then they say it's up to your site administrator to do this. And so there's kind of a conflict of who do I listen to, or we need help with this placement. We'll ask your site administrator for help. And this have been done this way. So just, it gets difficult because you basically have 2 different bosses telling you what to do. And they're great at communicating to each other, but then just, it's
Careful now. Okay, all right. The next article, last one we're going to open it up, that we have to choose is Article 10, Employee Authority and Protection. Before I pass this over to Shari. I'm gonna give you some like interesting anecdotal evidence that surprised me. So I work in these 5 counties around here. So I gave a bargaining survey to one, and a lot of union attitude is when you say, rank these 10 things that are most important to you for bargaining. They say, don't include salaries or any of that. That's number one. You're just wasting that. And I'm like, let them say it's number one. It's fine. So I include 3 money-related items and 7 non. It was increasing salaries, increasing supplements, and bonuses tied to pay. Just for the record, this is not Leon County, but it's nearby. Okay. So number one was salaries. You got me on there. To your point about like COVID's the reason they left. Okay, salary was number one. I was shocked that number 2 was not money. It was district-wide supporting student behavior through the administration. It was student behavior was so bad. They said, keep the supplements. I need the district to have my back with students. That kind of surprised the hell out of me. And everyone else, it was like, oh, leave out those compensation things. It's a serious problem. So Shari's gonna talk about this now.
I'm gonna take a deep breath before I begin. I have spent a considerable amount of time drafting exactly what I wanted to say, but I'm gonna speak mostly from, not from my notes. Especially with the recent tragedy in Texas. And I don't have to go into any details about what's going on in the minds and the hearts of teachers, administrators, and staff at our schools right now. Classroom discipline, removal of students' classroom control, Article 10, has been on our minds even before most recent events in the news. The superintendent's town hall meetings, I went to all of them but one, and in every single one, just to echo what Chris has said, discipline, class removal, support of teachers in the classrooms, the disruptive behaviors that are decreasing instructional time and not allowing us to do all the things that we need to do to close the achievement gaps, which is why we teach, which is why we're here. We are hoping to take a deeper dive into Article 10 and look for ways that we can kind of hone in the procedures and the policies that affect the classroom discipline and how our employees must respond and how our administrators should respond. You can see I'm getting kind of choked up about it, so thank you for your patience. I'm hoping that we can come together and find more specific, more clear, progressive, clearly defined steps that are equitably applied across schools and across the district for the kinds of behaviors that we're seeing in increasing amounts in our classrooms. It is getting more and more difficult to teach. And we're seeing, it used to be when I first started teaching 25 years ago, I had 1, maybe 2 children that offered challenges in my classroom that were disruptive. Now it could be as many as half, with and without IEPs. At the early elementary level, it could take through the MTSS process as long as 6 months to get a child identified and to get them the support services that they need. And in that time, and I guess that's not contract language specifically, but in that time, a lot of instructional time is lost and achievement gaps get bigger and bigger and bigger. So equitable application and more clearly defined steps. I've looked at Article 10, Section 5 and Section 8, and it's very big. And teachers need to know through our contract language that Leon County School has our backs, that we're going to be supported. If we do a better job at this, as Chris said, as a priority, we're going to attract more teachers to our schools, especially to the harder to staff schools. And we're going to retain them because they're going to feel supported. So take a deep breath here. As I say, my heart and our hearts go out to the families of those affected in Texas. And I hope that we can do better and potentially avoid some of these tragedies. Thank you for your indulgence.
Feedback on that? that real quick?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of us in this room, by the time a behavioral scenario reaches a point where we have to go to administration, we're serious on it, that this has become a serious problem, that there's no turning back. I know an instance at my site that involved students in culinary, where they go handle knives and fire, and the behavior problem consistently happened. And there was nothing that administration could do or would do to support the teacher to remove this child. It took months of complaining and saying that this is not working out right. Yeah, that if we're coming to an administrator, it's already reached our breaking point of this can't continue on in our classroom anymore. We're not going to them because it was a one-time thing. And I think that that's what we're talking about when we need that support. It's we've already done all of our management strategies to navigate it within our room. And now we need that additional support and that additional backing to deal with it. And sometimes it is removed from that class, or it's, additional resources that are discipline-wise, that when we have to maintain face when it's an older student, we can't be writing the kid up every single day, but at what point can an administrator step in and help save our face? Because then they're coming back into our classroom the next day, and now they're even more mad at us because we've written them up every single week. What can be done there to help minimize that?
And I have heard from members mentioning getting reprimanded for writing too many referrals.
Yes.
And go get help from your friends. They don't have the problem in that class. And then it just degrades the teacher, and they're like, fine, I don't want to try anymore. And I'll just let I don't want to get in trouble. I've asked for help. No one's giving me these resources. And then it's like, what do? Do you write them up every single time to have documentation?
Or the unfortunate part is at some of our sites that are so large, by the time the referral gets processed or the issue is processed, it's been a week, it's been 2 weeks.
Right.
And so now you're recalling an event that happened 2 weeks ago. The kids still been sitting in my class for a 2-week time frame, and we're still trying to figure out and navigate that.
And I've also heard complaints from, across the county, I'm not speaking of any specific site, but of positive behavior. Like, we want the kid to be happy, so someone sends them to the office for a behavior problem, and they come back with a
Bag
juice
of
box.
chips and
juice. Or they get to go play on a video game in the guidance counselor's office, or so.
So I want to add to what I said by saying that bringing more school counselors, guidance counselors, social workers is part of the solution, and we're looking forward to that. But we can't say, great, check, done. There's still more that needs to be done. The trauma-informed care, especially call them the COVID kids, right? Especially these kids who have not had a normal school year, aggressions have gone up big time, and it's going to take years for us to be talking lovingly about, oh, remember when we had COVID. We can do more, and we really can to support our teachers. And the contract language is very vague.
this also plays on why teachers are leaving. Teachers are leaving.
And then the last piece is just to say that the more we do for early intervention around behavior, the easier it's going to be for the 3rd through 12th grade teachers.
Out of everything we brought up, that activated this whole time more than anything, so that what my survey shows, that discipline is a serious issue, and I agree that, you know, we do have this language in here, we're gonna come back with stronger language that, I mean, across the board and actual enforcement, because the zero tolerance policy, I know personally, having dealt with members with problems where there was like a knife on campus, that kid went back the next day, that's not zero tolerance. So there's lots of issues like that, but okay, we need this one up a bit. All right, for the compensation article, we're gonna ask for salary increases. I understand we kind of front loaded this, I just realized we talked about the leapfrogging and those restrictions already. Do you anticipate what your TSI is?
The total or the.
Either, if the total is roughly 5 times last year's, is that right?
Yeah, it's about 2.6, I think, and then we have to take the charge off the top of that, so I think we have about 2.2.
We've been estimating around 2,
Yeah.
just for, and then the split 50-50.
We'll know for sure in July when they give us that fund, but somewhere in there.
What is the rules for how the charters take money? from you?
It's, they get it based on formula. It's DOE provides us a revenue generating spreadsheet or form for charter schools. So it tells, they get their percentage based on FTE.
Okay.
So they dictate how much they get.
All right, for specialist pay, we presented last time, like a one flat amount for everybody. I'm not calculating anything today to that extent, but you were interested as a district in having SLPs in a separate pay scale, is that correct?
I'm a little more interested in having them on a separate pay scale, but we are interested in you know, ensuring that we do something for those specialists, SLPs, psychologists. We can recognize that as a gap. I think that I don't know that there's appetite for having a completely separate scale for them. It was what similar to what you proposed, but I think we're definitely talking about ways that we could compensate them through the structure of the money that we have.
Our goal is to essentially not have vendors ever take positions out of our unit. Does LCS have that same goal? The goal is to service all the students fully. I understand that. Beyond that, to me, we don't want SLPs going to vendors. We want to approach us and say, we have this issue because of the contractual constraints. And so we want to move past that to not have to hire vendors. Is that LCS's kind of idea, or is it a first tool to grab, get a vendor to deal with it?
I think meeting the needs of the students are
Right. Okay. And so the question is, if you can meet them with having all SLPs that you're having on staff versus having them all as vendors, you don't care either way necessarily. You just want-
Yeah, it goes back to site-based management. That is, yes. It's you know, it really depends on what the individual principal's preference is for getting those students served.
Pick their level of need at that particular location.
Right.
So if you have like 2 students that need it, does that mean you should have a full-time person versus hire?
Right. We do have like interpreter, for example, who goes from school to school, maybe servicing the 2 kids there, the 1 kid there. So that already exists in LCS for other positions like that. And so I don't think it just automatically just go to the vendor. It's easier, maybe, but.
No, I was just saying it's a consideration.
Okay.
I was gonna speak to something I think a little bit later, in terms of kind of specialists in other areas, but I just wanted to, provide a little bit of insight as an SLP, relating to vendor versus an LCS SLP. I know with speaking to SLPs throughout the district that the fact that we know that these companies are getting paid maybe around $75 an hour to hire an SLP to work in Leon County schools. Well, I'm working for Leon County schools and I want to be loyal to Leon County schools for my career. That's like my long-term goal, right? My parents have been in education. I want to retire out of education. But how can I do that if I am getting paid $29 an hour at my pay rate? I get an offer from an agency to quit my job in Leon County, go work for the agency, get paid $50 an hour, and come back and work in Leon County in the same job position. It creates an extreme amount of frustration, anger. It does not retain SLPs. It does not recruit SLPs. And that we think is a big issue. The Leon County Schools SLPs, the ones who are loyal to you guys and loyal to all of our kids. We know the kids need us. And so from our end, I get from your end, you know, you just want to get the needs met, and whether it's a vendor or an LCS SLP, the needs are getting met. And at the end of the day, from any SLP's perspective, or an OT or a PT, that's what we want too, right? We're here for the kids. We want a job, but we have chosen this profession, so we feel passionately that the kids need what they need. But financially, to see that huge discrepancy between money just going into these vendors, why isn't that money being used towards LCS, SLPs, or other service providers to keep us here and to retain us and recruit future SLPs from the colleges that come in and do their student teaching here? They should come in, do their student teaching, be like, oh my gosh, I want to work for LCS. This is an amazing place for an SLP, because they're required to come into our schools. And I cannot say with any certainty that that's happening. And I think there are a lot of reasons why that's not happening. So I think maybe if we can just be mindful of that, you know, in the discussion, it doesn't necessarily have good optics to us, like why the company can get so much more than your actual people do.
If it's okay, I'm not an expert in this area, but we're talking about what's best for students. What's best for students, regardless of the type of teacher that they are, is consistency. If we are using outside vendors, then the consistency can be lost of the relationships that these service providers are giving to our students. So if they are Leon County School employees, part of our bargaining unit, then they're going to see the same teacher year after year after year. And we all know the benefit of that, what the benefit of that is. So just to include that in our conversations. It might be what's best, what's best for the students is consistency of the teachers. What's best for the district may be a financial decision.
Right, but in terms of financial decision, you're just paying more for those SLPs because you gotta have overhead for that vendor.
So that's actually not correct at all.
You decided.
I just want to, I mean, in talking about what we pay the vendors and what that money could be used for y'all, that money is a teacher unit that was allocated to a school. So it's not additional funds that were found or given to a school. They could not find a teacher to take that job. So they got to provide the service to the children so they convert those salary dollars to that contract. You're absolutely correct. We pay about $75 an hour, but those vendors provide several, and they do consistently have the same person that comes to the school, listening to the principals and to the talk. So there's a consistency there. It's a matter of, even if we brought that money back, it's not going to help to raise your salary because it's already paid for. It's there for a teacher's salary. They can't hire the teachers. That's why they're converting. It's not additional funds that we provide to a school for those contracted services.
We're saying they can't hire those teachers because the pay isn't enough, but then the company hires them at a higher pay.
So it's not a fair, so comparing your take home salary to the hourly rate is not a fair comparison, because there is a lot of dollars in benefits that are associated with your position that would then have to be compared. Additionally, you're full-time employed, you get leave, right? So a contracted position, you pay $75 an hour for only the hours that they are there providing services, which are much less than a full-time employee would be providing services. So I'm just saying, as far as what a contracted employee is compensated, including the values of retirement and health insurance and benefits and things of that nature, is not an apples to apples comparison when you look at it.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's a very fair point, and in our discussions, we have already been considering that, so we are aware of that. We appreciate you reiterating that, and I do think that's an important consideration. I think in terms, of overall morale for the LCS employees, there's still a conversation to be had. In terms of retention, recruitment, there's still a conversation to be had. In terms of how you contribute to your school site, there's a conversation to be had. Those contract SLPs, they can pop in and out. And maybe one day I'll end up a contract SLP. Who knows? That's not my plan, but life may force me to get there if things happen or don't happen, right? But to Shari's point too, I'm there on campus. I build rapport with every single kid throughout the school site. I'm doing teacher duty. I'm doing staff duty. I'm involved with the MTSS process. I talk to a kid in the cafeteria and their speech and language doesn't seem typical to me. I contact our referral coordinator, get them on a meeting list so we can have a discussion about the kids. I don't think that a contract SLP may have those same opportunities, given the nature of the position, to be that hands-on in supporting the entire school-wide initiative. And I think that's something we should consider too in these discussions.
And to be clear, we're interested in having conversations that will address these issues, to the extent possible. And, just the one that is proposed at this point in time, I don't know if that's the one. So we will continue to have conversations around how we get there.
And I do wanna just say too, I appreciate you acknowledging that there is a gap and something is missing for those service providers. That's something historically, I think we've felt overlooked. So being acknowledged, being talked about, I think that goes a long way too, in terms of building trust, building relationship, building morale in general. So we're looking forward to that.
Do you want to, comment about okay, there are benefits that go into that, so I understand the apples oranges comparison, but it's just that when current LCS specialists are given the opportunity, they seem to a lot of times jump ship and become working for the vendor. So it's like whatever the benefits package is there seems more favorable, whoever you're moving there.
And caseload structure, caseload path.
And the
They
case
feel like
like
they
that,
can
so that's
control it
like, it's multiple,
And
This is also going on in every district. It's supply and demand. On top of the capitalism. You're taking a certain group and doubling it and going around stage. It's a difficult issue.
And the reality of it is, they're currently, the SLPs are current normal member of your unit. So there's not a differentiated structure in how we have that. We couldn't do that if we wanted to. Right? So under the current language, right? But we want to talk about different language, then let's do it.
I do know of a lot of SLPs that feel overwhelmed with their caseloads. I feel like they're not providing students everything they deserve.
The problem is that, from the LCS perspective, though, it's like, they'll get a vendor to replace them.
Yeah, I think we consider it as a long-term investment of avoiding due process and having these children served properly and as they legally are obligated to be. I think long-term we would avoid due process hearings and advocates and all these things that are really kind of hitting us in that for less than ideal.
I think where we're at is we as a district have a really hard time finding and recruiting these individuals under the current circumstances, right? And so when we're able to get those folks to come work for us, wonderful. For the most part, we struggle with that. I think that if we have a little bit different parameters for those individuals, then it might be easier to find folks. But I'll guarantee you, there's people that will leave one place to go to another for 50 cents, right? So when the gap is, $50 an hour, that's significant. I don't know if I'm ever gonna make that up, right? But I think that as we approach this whole situation, we can always make it better. We just work together to do it.
I think that's what our goal is right now. I don't want y'all to think we're like complaining, but we want to work together to solve all this for everybody.
I mean, sometimes there's a reality that there's no readily available solution, other than work together to try and make it better until you're able to get there.
Sarah, do you want to continue on the non-typical position supplements?
Sure, yeah, that was another area that LCTA would like to discuss during this season of bargaining. There are a number of, like Chris was saying, non-typical teacher positions that we feel that their supplements may need to be revisited, whether they have existing supplements or whether they don't have existing supplements and may need one. I think some areas we've already started to talk about are like some kind of TSE supplement, as that is a critical staff shortage need. Even the Florida Department of Education said in 2021-22 school year that ESE had the highest percentage of courses being taught by teachers without the correct certification in that area, whatever that area of specialty was. So that is a critical need. I know you guys are aware of that. Having some kind of supplement could help with retention and recruitment, right? We've been talking about many things. Title I supplement is something we presented and would like to continue to discuss. But we also have SE teachers in separate settings. Sometimes they're called different things. We have EBB, CBI, VE. On the matrix, it's going to be that separate setting. They have very different work day than a typical teacher, and often, as far as I know, they're just paid as a typical teacher, aside from, maybe if they have a master's degree supplement, but they might be helping a student with feeding all day long, whether it's, spoon feeding or tube feeding. They help with toileting, they change diapers, constantly. So that workload is very different than a traditional teacher. So we might want to look into that more closely. There's also some other fringe groups that are, from my understanding, getting paid traditional teacher pay, like the LAPS team, the local assistant technology specialist. We have the behavior specialist at the district level, the program specialist for behavior, and the program specialist for compliance. They are consistently working 15 hours extra every single week to try to get their paperwork finished, and that all comes down on them. So we need to make sure legally that LCS is doing the right thing with our paperwork, and I'm not sure that their true efforts are being recognized in that way, in terms of working over spring break and at night and on weekends. And then, like we've been talking about, still we still have school psychologists, OT, PT, in addition to the SLPs, that whole group of non-traditional teachers.
And all right, we're almost done. So then the next item on conversation is we're calling a professional development plan. It's modeled after some other public service units that Scott has been talking about.
So we had already given the supplement for recertification last time, but this idea behind this was if individuals keep up with their professional development for their certification so that we don't have the issues that kind of come around every March, where I've got a non-reappoint for this person and people are keeping up with a certain number of points that they're getting every year, that once you go ahead and reach those points, that you would then automatically move up where you pay, you kept up with your professional development plan. It would be like kind of like a supplement incentive that would operate itself kind of in the same way that steps in the past have been used, but for law enforcement and firefighters, it's been used various places to go ahead and to allow them to move up the ladder financially. So whether or not that is a way of resolving some of the concerns about providing a career path for individuals, so people would know X number of years I could be making this much in Leon County. That's why I want to go to Leon County. Because if I keep up with my professional development plan, then this gets me to that particular part of the salary. In addition to that, we discussed the Title I supplement, which is another $100 per semester, which we can all agree and have agreed in fast that it is woefully insignificant. And, for many folks, I guess insulting. As well as critical shortage areas as defined by the Florida Department of Education. There's a part of our contract that speaks to that about having discussions around increases for individual critical shortage areas, and with the areas that we may be looking at shortages, whether math, science, and their list for 2022-23 already up on the Florida Department of Education. So having analysis between what they've listed and what the needs of the county are, and if there's anything that we can negotiate along those lines that we would like to do that as well. They've identified English, ESE, science general, reading, ESOL, math, and science physical.
Say it again, Leonard.
I said the state's list of critical shortages of 7 days. What?
Is he muted?
Yeah.
Leonard, you're muted.
I was, and then it goes back and forth. Anyhow, the state's critical shortage is one thing. What's the critical shortage in Leon for a supplement is probably a better topic.
That's what the question was.
And the Taiwan supplement, just so you know, that was for, basically you needed something on paper to pass an audit. It wasn't to reward teachers for working. It wasn't an appropriate amount to reward teachers working in the Taiwan school. It was just something to get on paper that most districts did. It really is a token amount. We could look at, again, we can look at increasing all of these topics with one pot of money.
I'm not sure I understood that last, what you were saying.
Basically, we could agree to looking at all those things, but we
Yeah.
have to also understand that we have one,
Yeah, no,
$6 million.
But what you just said about the Title I, it being for an audit, I didn't really understand that.
Essentially, years ago, I think Kim can explain or someone there, you needed differentiated pay. You had to pay someone differently who worked in Title I school. Some of my districts, the entire district is Title I. So everyone got $50 or $75. It was just for this differentiated pay statute. It wasn't to give them what they're worth for working in a Title I school.
It was the same time when we were doing, remember, we had it for a while, when we had to bring all the parents up to be highly qualified or highly qualified. It was that same time, especially it started with the ones that were in Title I schools, they couldn't hire an aide or a parent unless they were highly qualified. It was that same time period. Right. Federal.
With the intent of incentivizing people to go to a Title I school and stay there, but turn across the year.
Unfortunately, more of a check the box.
Yeah, right. Leonard, did any county use this to actually recruit people to there, or was it just box checking?
I don't know of any county that has a meeting for them. If a school, a Title I school falls into a B or an F, there was like $5,000 if you're a highly effective teacher, you could come over under a UNICEF grant. There's ways to attract highly effective teachers when the school was going down. There were various federal grant monies. I don't think that they're around anymore, but that was one of the ways to bring a B or F school back up. By paying large amounts to try to get other teachers through there.
Okay, thanks. All right, you're right with the last thing. And this is maybe, I don't know how to bargain this, beyond student behavior, another thing that maybe everyone is on the same page about is they want the ability to look at Skyward and understand the amount of money they're gonna get. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so Skyward, I really don't know what's going on in there. I just came back from maternity leave, and so I lost a significant amount of pay for being out on maternity leave. And today I got my check in Skyward, and it was like $300 for the month. I have no idea how we got there. And I called somebody in payroll and tried to have them explain it to me. Even their numbers that they were crunching were different than what I was seeing. And there's supplements involved that are all in there. That this was salary. And every month it's a bit different. And it's been different. And I know that, my unique situation, it should still be very easy to figure out, okay, I was out for X number of days for maternity leave that were unpaid. and this was how much was taken out. I mean, when I was in March, when I was on my leave, there were negative values. And suddenly I was paying the district back for things, and I was like, I don't even understand how I'm paying you back for something I haven't even done, or why I was losing out on like supplemental pay when I was still completing those tasks while I was home. Like, there was just certain things that were just like wild that everyone across like sites are trying to figure out, how was this calculated? When was this done? It's different per person. So it's not like I can sit here with her and go, okay, how does yours look? Well, hers looks entirely different because she's at a different school site with different supplements and different pay things. And so there's no real way to figure out how to understand it. And when you call, it's still confusing because the person who I guess was handling my thing happened to be out today, but even the numbers that they were crunching were all different from the numbers reflected in my payroll.
Even simple things like the years
Yeah.
of service I shouldn't have to go. I've gotten so many calls from people asking me, how do I figure out the year of service? Where do I go?
Yeah.
What I talk to? So gratefully, I'm grateful that our bookkeeper, Teresa Lee, like she went ahead and looked into it. Everybody got their years of service, but they weren't. Sorry, it's
Almost got it.
Sorry, sorry, my Hispanic cancer going. But I feel like we're in that Seinfeld episode where the person writes, oh, a difficult patient for the older people that are my age, difficult patient. It shouldn't be a secret. Like, years of service should be there. It's just should be a little friendlier. Like, things should just be on there. How many years of service do I have? How much money? Well, lead time is there, but just all the little things should be there. Not like a secret doctor's patient file that you're like,
Can we use the 6 million to replace Skylar?
We're gonna
Yeah.
caucus.
Sorry, we'll caucus on that one. I'm not sure we're gonna put our funds towards the
Not for
district.
another 6 months.
But
Not for another 6 months.
is
that's
that
why
when you
we'll let Nancy
retire?
get out instead of.
You see that when you're on active leave, everybody has different benefit deductions based on what you're enrolled in. So
Oh,
it can be very difficult to, like, every situation is so unique. What were you
Yeah.
paid for? What were you not paid for? What
Yes.
is your supplement? What school side are you at? What benefits are you enrolled for? When do they come out of your check?
I appreciate that, but we have to understand, and maybe your paychecks are a mess to deal with. You're getting paid from Skyward, right? We cannot all be accepting collateral damage to your own system. And it can't be that, sorry, we just can't explain your pay because it's too complicated. It sounds like you could, it's just for every employee, you'd stop administering other HR duties. I don't know if it's right. So, I mean, I get it, but
I
we
can,
got
I
to.
can explain to everyone's pay if you want to get it for the rest of the year.
Right, but it shouldn't require
Just
that.
a slash.
I know what I'm gonna
It's
get
like,
paid
I have no
every
idea.
year.
Is this a widespread issue though, or is it a?
Yes.
Yes, it's a widespread
So
issue.
the reason this is being brought up, and it's like we're bargaining, is if we ask people, what's the most important thing to bargain to you? Why this floats to the top, I mean, that says something. They're like, money and how much am I even supposed to be getting paid? No one knows in Scotland. I had Sarah send me 2 to 3 years of paychecks, and first, 2 were just missing from Skyward, no information. So she had to get her bookkeeper to recover those, and I put them in Excel, and the difference was like $3,000 to $6,000, I mean,
Wow.
thousands of dollars difference.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, it's
it's
just.
like, I have no idea. So I have no idea what I'm getting in June or July. It's, and nobody can tell me. And to see the shock on my face this morning when I logged into the account and saw my paycheck was gonna be $300 something, I was like,
I mean, to her point, and
yeah,
it is this particular, something like that, when you change position, I mean, it's a Skyward issue. It has always been a Skyward, and I've tried to get them to explain it to me, and I'll get it after a while, but it is not, number one, not easy to explain.
yeah.
Because it's very, very, we're all intelligent people in here, even me. But to get to understand it is, I know where you're coming from.
And like, I'm not gonna be the first or the last person to go out on this kind of leave. And then there's even other people that go, maybe I am, hey, who knows, it's just the first one here. But there,
It is.
and then, when you add in other things on top of it, and then, the additional pay for what we agreed on, that's gonna go in June, right? That's gonna go in. Now people are gonna see that added into their paycheck in Skyward and be like, well, where did this $1,500 come? Or where did this $3,000? So people aren't gonna wonder, but then we'll see the tax.
I guess a common theme that I'm hearing here is things around money cause stress. And being able to look in one place and be able, to, there are some people who balance their checkbook every month. I don't know, maybe. Okay, so of course. And then there are people that just want to look once a month to make sure there's money in the bank, right? But the power of the control of being able to go into a system, Skyward or whatever chalkboard system we're using, and be able to see, this is what I have, this is what I earn, this is what I can expect, this is what it looks like over time. I know that when I refinanced my house, I had to go into Skyward and I had to print things. So it goes beyond just, I need to know what I get paid. I use that for projections, for getting loans, getting refinancing, and so on and so forth. So I guess the conversation is, what else can we do? And you can answer that question now. What else can we do? Who can we beg to have a system that accurately tells every employee how much comp time I have, how much sick leave I have, how many years have I been working in this district? What are you crediting me for in this district? How many comp hours do I have? If we get to a rollover situation, how many are, because I know that I talked to my principal and she was trying to keep track of how many people had used what of the 12 comp days, as an example. And so I don't know whether she was doing it on an Excel sheet or, she called me one day, she's like, Shari, you've gone over, you're gonna have to converse these to sick and person. Okay, great, no problem. But I should have been able to just open up Skyward and go, oh, look, I have 2 days left, great.
So when is that system set to, do we have like a contract with that system? Because like, like A3 Focus and all these, like we've had contracts where there's somebody to help us understand this or fix it. Like for A3, we need a one line fixed on there. So the parents can see it. Another like Focus, like parents can't see their child's IEP, which is time inefficiency when they're having to call a teacher 4 years ago, or time inefficiency that I'm sure Brett is absolutely loving all those emails. How many years of service do I have? How many years of service? That's not right. That's not right. Because they haven't had to look at it. And now that they're looking at it, why can't it be changed where instead of just the bookkeeper seeing years of service, everyone sees their own stuff, like the lines, can't they be reprogrammed? Because we've done that with other programs. So it was the contract. There's got to be a point person that can fix that little computer thing. Does that make sense? As who can see things? Like I can see every student in my school, but Becca can only see her class. So is there?
What I would say is that it's not quite that simple, but there's definitely room for improvement. And believe me, we would love to experience that improvement
I'm
ourselves.
sure it's great.
So, and there's also part of this is also just there's a basic level of understanding that goes into our system and process because of the way that the law is written around compensation. It's not super intuitive. Okay?
That's for what?
It's not super intuitive.
Okay.
It's not, if you work somewhere else, me, I came into the school system and I had 20 plus years of HR,
Yes.
right? And nowhere I'd ever been paid people the way that we do, right? But that's because it's dictated by the legislature, right? So there's a basic sort of, it's not super intuitive for teachers to look at this and say, I understand how you're paying. If I sat there and explained it to you, you'd say, oh, okay, I get that, right? But it's kind of complex, right? So nonetheless, we admit that Skyward has at least some room for improvement. And believe me, we're working to try and resolve those issues, right? But some of this is dictated by our contract as well. Our contract stipulates when we give credit for years of experience. And a person who believes that they have 15 years of experience doesn't always have 15 years of experience according to what the contract says, right? Because they may have worked at a non-accredited school. They may have not worked enough hours in that school. They must have been, there's any number of reasons why those numbers may be different. And so that's part of the frustration. You would expect Joe just to be able to go there and look at it and say, he would say 15 when you think it should be 15.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm saying you can't see it at all. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think the big surprise is that when I go there, there's nowhere I can see it. And I think a lot of the problems be alleviated if people can see it and be like, oh, that's wrong.
I think there would be maybe more issues because people would all say, oh, no, this is not right. This is not right. Because
over time versus like right now, you got
Right.
bomb rush.
You can
bomb
press it
rush.
all into a week.
I mean, so I got a complaint this week from a person who I talked to earlier in the week after we had sent out the list, and then Scott sent out the list again, and she said, well, you told me you fixed this and it's not fixed on the same list. And I said, it's the same list. Scott took the list that I sent out on Monday, he resent it out on Wednesday. We had fixed it, but it didn't look like we. had
Even
fixed it.
you just said that though in the email too.
He did say.
But to Patty's point is that they would
They can't
have,
see it.
they could have gone in and checked themselves and saw that it was changed, and then they wouldn't have generated the extra work. And I think you're right, that there's a flag to change
Yes.
to allow privileges to go to
That's what I'm
teachers
talking
and not just bookkeepers. We can talk to CIS about that, but in my experience, it's changed.
Yeah, the privilege of to be able to see it, like I have privileges to see the entire school students.
Right.
Becca only has her class, the librarian has all fourth grade. So I think there has to be that system to be corrected where teachers can see their
Their
stuff.
It would be a new setup in that system, because focus is a total.
I think
Oh, I was just
Yeah.
using focus as a program example, I was using also.
Right, no,
April,
but
so
I'm
that-
saying the way
there
it's
has
set
to
up allowed, I
Yeah.
understand we got Skyward 2011. And it's come a long way, because I was had nervous breakdowns the whole time we were doing it. There are still improvements, even on the finance side, that we find. As far as the access, that's something that we have to have like a flag somewhere on your employee access screen. Because you can't give you just access to everything in the employee access thing, because you can't type just to you. But on your employee access, you could.
That's what I'm
I think
saying,
that's
like, it's
where-
everything that you guys should see about me, I should be able to see about me.
Personal information, name, address,
But
phone
you
number,
can't
years of
put that
service.
just to you.
And sometimes
That's
it's
the
just
thing,
not, sometimes it's just not helpful. You think they should definitely be able to do this, right? We just implemented a new applicant training system, and there was tons of instances where I said, this is easy, you should be able to do this, and they're like, sorry, we can't do it.
It's not
It's
a
a-
modern,
Yeah,
like
it's not a-
coding interface.
Yeah,
And
that's what I'm
so-
saying, it's a coding situation.
But it's not a modern one, and that's because Skyward has limitations on the Florida legal requirements, so there's.
It's not
more
even a
that goes
coding
into it.
situation. So Skyward, when we purchased Skyward, it's an off-the-shelf solution. We don't manage it, and I think you've heard this before we talked about it. So we don't get changes unless Skyward makes the changes. We don't have programming staff here to manage it. I think 100% the module that has employee information, we can get TIS in here and we can talk through if there's something else. What you're talking about for the years of service, that is not, to my knowledge, available at all in employee. It's available in the HR system where they set pay. It's not something that I think we would be able to open up. But I think there are other options in employee information that we could talk through. Maybe we could get a small group to kind of work through with Max or something in TIS, what options are available in employee information that we could open up. But it is not as simple as some of these other solutions where we do have programmers dedicated to working with that system. When they went with this solution, they purposely chose to keep it off the shelf and to make Skyward the support. So we go through it constantly, little changes that we find with like fixed assets or whatever. We have to get on the phone. We have to put in a ticket. We don't have access to half the stuff we need to do on a daily basis.
Well,
And
yeah,
we would
yeah,
love
it
to
must be
have
so
a new
frustrating.
system. We've talked about that a million times, that there's so many more like modern systems but it is, when Casey was talking about, could we dedicate the 6 months, that's the cost. And it is a huge overhaul when you think about having to recreate our entire position management, all of our financial systems. It's not easy, but I definitely think we can work together. We can get TIS in here and we can look at the employee information system, because we get frustrated when we look at our own stuff. I think everyone feels frustration with the information in Skyward. So we can definitely see what we can do in employee information. I don't know that we're gonna be able to get that piece that's in the HR module onto that screen.
So Diana, who's sitting right behind me, was the person who was directed. We said, hey, if you have a question, send it to Diana.
Oh.
And I said, Diana, how many emails have you got? And she said, a lot. She doesn't even know about it.
But I think we put that as something that we get a small group together. We worked with a small group before with some of these things. We get a small group together, we get Mags in here and we talk through what is possible with Skyward.
So let me ask you a quick question, and this is just for my benefit. So do we pay Skyward like a maintenance fee, or is it, so we pay the maintenance fee?
That's typical.
So we pay them a maintenance fee
So-
and you put in a ticket to fix something's for you, right?
We put in tickets all the time.
But
it's not-
We need to customize.
Right, but with,
something.
I can give you an option, like whenever we want like a major system change, especially in Florida, it goes to, there's a Florida consortium. And so then the consortium has to vote on whether or not it's something that they want Skyward to actually look at. And then Skyward decides if it's something they want to, and then they tell everyone what the cost would be, the increased cost if they actually chose to make those changes. It's not
No,
like,
it's
like
quite
the things that
fascinating.
we want is like, we want, we want an asset unlocked. And we have to like put in a ticket to Skyward for little things that we as administrators of that module should be able to do. So it's not,
No,
It's like
thank
if
you, that's
you wanted
helpful.
to change a field in Google Docs, right? They're not, I said, if you wanted to change a field in, oh, sorry. You personally wanted to change a field.
All right.
we're gonna caucus now. I'm calling it.
Whatever, I'm saying in your personal life. If you wanted to change something in a shared software, that would be a similar thing, is what I'm saying. They're not gonna change it just for you. Right, so there's things that you can configure, you can change your background, you can change that. And so when we're in a shared commercial off the shelf system, it's like that.
Thank you for explaining this.
I'm sorry I used that term.
By the way, we were just informed that there's a tab, someone must be watching, but there's a tab that you can't access that information.
So here's a.
So
If you
we'll
click
find
on
out.
that question mark in
Yeah.
Skyward and you go to submit idea,
You can
Not
submit
me.
about my pay. Explain it.
I can talk to you.
But I think
They done good.
to what
Cross it off the list.
Sarah was saying about the SLP thing, we're saying about this, there are things we can work on that are mutual frustrations that impact morale. And so kind of like the same idea of automating certain things with the CSAP that we kind of talked about earlier, like trying to make it easy use, because people see there's an app for that. So then they're like, why is it so difficult for Leon County Schools to do it when it's not necessarily, the app kind of thing, but they see something.
Right.
And so then they internalize, well, it should just be that easy to go get the app. And so whatever we can do together to communicate that and work on solutions, that's what we're.
I think to Kim's point, we've worked well in small groups in the past. And this is maybe this is a good opportunity for us to do that. So maybe let's get our heads together about some of these ideas.
So the 6 million you said, was that more or less realistic cost of a new HR software package? It's in the single millions of dollars if you were to just like buy ADP or some other HR software.
At the low end.
Yeah, I would say
At the
probably.
low end.
So there's $6 more million.
I thought we were doing this together, you should have.
Ours.
I don't know why I'm laughing, but I'm not here.
Y'all are pushing the retirement up further and
6 more
further.
months.
Okay, do you have anything you wanted to pass? Or
Not, we want to caucus.
Yeah, let's caucus first.
Leonard, do you have anything else to add?
No, it's very entertaining because I've had the Skyward discussion for 3 years. This was the answer to everyone's prayers with Skyward. That's how they sold it.
That's how they sold it.
They did.
Oh,
It-
I can sell
it
you.
replaced-
Let me just.
it replaced the program called terms, which everybody hated terms. And so Skyward was a plus. And then it became user unfriendly and all the issues you're raising are almost everywhere. It's a mystery why they can't fix it, but Skyward does not, HR does not talk to finance, does not talk to payroll. There's only one system in Texas that I know does it all. And it's a fortune to convert, which is why most people can't. Anyway, that's
All right, we're gonna caucus. And probably, let's go 30 minutes.
3:30.
So, then I'll come back and give us 30 minutes before we can go shorter if it's needed, but. What's next?
a lot of.
Yeah, we'll go.
you, Leonard.
Tell everybody that I'm just not.
I don't know. So all of your stuff on here. No, she doesn't want it. Yeah, she-
All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
We're
Thanks,
ready.
Leonard.
All right, first I want to thank everybody who participated in that opening. It was, from my perspective, a really good dialogue of several very important issues. I think we share a lot of concerns. We receive them well. The devil is in the details, trying to get all of that into language, and then trying to prioritize what we're going to do financially. But we do share concerns. We will work. The non-monetary things I think we can work on, especially Skyward. I do know that's ahead of. But it sounds like a lot of issues and a lot of priorities. So put it all in language and put it on priorities, and we'll work with you as fast as we can, because our goal is not to have a repeat of last year that dragged on a little bit too long. And I'll take some blame for that. So we're going to have language once the governor signs some bills, probably on Article 13, which is evaluations, and Article 26, which deals with committees about evaluations. It's not the law yet, but we expect that to be coming soon to a theater near you. We also have some articles, we'll have a response to Article 7 today. We will pass Article 21, compensation. With various things that need to be updated, and Brett will have copies to pass to everybody. There's some old language we deleted and we updated some language.
Yeah. So to Leonard's point, most of this is just cleanup from compensation language that's outdated in the contract. 21.01 there, that's old language related to the, employee salaries for 14 and 15 has no bearing right now. So we're proposing to eliminate it. Now, the numbers, obviously, as we go and eliminate it, we'll replace the numbers. For some reason, the formatting on my computer wouldn't work. So we'll fix the numbers and bump things up as we go, right? So 21.01, we would recommend it be eliminated. 21.026, we're just updating the language to sort of coincide with how our ATS system works in terms of and how our processes within HR work. So they're not really substantive changes. They're just capturing the verbiage that's utilized. E is a substantive change where we would recommend that we strike through the language that says that limits the number of years that can be recognized for a vocational certification. feel like that's not fair to those teachers, and it limits our ability as a district to hire individuals into those positions. 21.082, there was a duplicative sentence under the supplements for advanced degree. So striking through the one that says $2,400 for a specialist. As you can see right below it, it says $3,600 for a specialist. So as the current language, the language reads in the current contract, it basically says that the specialist will get $2,400, and then it proceeds to say the specialist will get $3,600.
I discovered this myself. I think it was a copy and paste folder.
Right. 21.09 is just changing title. It's a non-substantive change. 21.11. This addresses health insurance programs. Okay. And so what we've done is changed it to say that we will cover at least 60% of the 2% in family premiums. All right, that means that we can cover more than 60% if we so choose. Next change is at 21.22, striking. So striking such individual shall then advance on the schedule in successive years based on additional years of service credit earned after their appointment. That is how things would work if we were on a step pay plan, but we're not on the state step pay plan. It's confusing to have that in there since we're not operating on a step plan. That's one of the big things that we run into is that a lot of teachers, the reason they don't understand is because they feel like they don't really understand the difference between a placement schedule and a step pay. They think the rest should be progressing as we go down, and that's what we'll all address. And then the last one would be to strike all of the language. Yeah, all of the language in 21.23.
Except for B.
Well, I meant to strike that.
Too late to take it.
I meant to strike it. It's all outdated.
Yeah.
It's all outdated. I think I underlined it instead of putting a little strike to the deal. On accident. I apologize about that. Any questions about that?
Yes. All right, the health insurance part, this is just not have a repeat of this year. Is that correct, or is there more intent behind that?
No. It's because, so I mean, it's to address the way that we are allocating funds towards paying the employer portion of the health insurance, right? So, I mean, ultimately, we could get into, we had language that was much, much more specific. And I can speak to that language, but ultimately, we felt like when we changed it, it makes it more easy to understand from a contract perspective.
Is there an estimated cost of what implementing at 60% this year? This is what the district is intending to implement. Remains that without at least 60% to what is being put towards healthcare.
Well, you don't have rates yet so they don't have, as far as I know, I'm not over healthcare, but they haven't received the new healthcare rates for this year. So I don't think there's any.
Yeah.
But I think that the board wants to continue what they put in place last year. They don't want employees to be surprised and see deductions changing. And so I think that is what he's aiming to do, is continue the current practice. But no, there's no dollar amount tied to it yet because we haven't received rates as far as I know.
So, hey, we don't, so yeah, I was speaking more from a budget perspective, but as it specifically relates to from a health insurance perspective, we don't have rates yet. And we also don't know how many people are going to choose what plan. So how much it's going to cost is, it's an estimate at this point in time. We don't know. But we do know, as she said, that there's the intent to try and continue from the board, continue with what we did last year and fund it from our.
So in the same sense that there's only 6 million for salary and that's a set amount, there has to be an amount set aside that the district is willing to go up to cover that additional cost. And is that money then, or that amount then not financially determined at this point, or just
I don't have
range?
I don't have that number at this point. Because we don't know rates are. We don't know how many people will be in there.
I also think that this, while this is something that is in this contract, this is something that impacts all the bargaining units and the exempt staff. And so we don't want to have one unit paying one amount while other units are paying different amounts.
Consistency.
Exactly.
And essentially the way that we, the more complex language that I was talking about, referred to before, essentially outlines the exact way that we did it. Essentially what we would do is take, so with an individual, we pay 80%, right? So we take 80% of the CHP cost and we would take that off the top of the total amount that for the premium of the individual, right? So that would come off. So we're paying the same dollar for dollar amount for an individual as we would for the family, right? And then from there, that's when we would apply that 60-40 split. So once we've taken the employee portion, 80%, and applied it, subtracted away from the total premium, we would multiply it by 40% to get the amount that the individual would actually owe and pay as part of their deduction. So it's always going to be at least 60%, which is why we changed it to that. It's just, as you can tell, it's a little bit more complex to explain.
So for 2107E, that would give all the years of credible service to vocational certifications. I know there's been, we've talked about folks that can and cannot get certain years of service because of contract language. And it's been said that I want to pay people as much as we can pay them because they'll attract more folks. So when it comes to any language that would alter that, is there consideration?
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting some counters. If you guys want to counter language, I think that our goal is to try and put the district in a position where we can attract and retain talent, right? And so if a person's got a legitimate claim to experience, we're not in the business of trying to deny people experience, right? We want to give credit where credit's due, right? But ultimately, to some extent, this contract, it is what it is. It's limiting in some ways, and that's what we're trying to do is take some of those limitations away where we've seen there to be issues. Now, you may have blind spots, and if there's blind spots, you can bring those to our attention. Now we have to talk.
And is the verified work experience being associated with anything like it is in G1 for instructional staff, where it's being referred to specific accreditations, or is it? How is that?
Well, I think that in those vocational certifications, that Jared can probably, this is where we're most often using this as that live, right? Those vocational certifications, it's real world work experience that is being counted. So like in his circumstance, it would be time spent as a welder, so that's what we're recognizing, right? And so it's legitimate and verified experience, and it's relevant to the job that they're doing in that capacity, right? the same as academic experience would be relevant to someone teaching math or science, right? So that's the way we're looking at it. And we feel like, you know, this limitation of 10 years is just sort of a self-imposed limitation that, you know, creates
Understood
an area.
completely. I just want to make sure that if we're gonna end up doing something for the vocational part that doesn't, you know, that it's still, if we're gonna loosen things up there, what does that mean for the instructional staff in terms of getting years of service? Because, you know, even getting one full year of credit requires you to work X amount of days in a year. So it doesn't explain any of that on here. So just trying to understand what it looks like.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
How do you do that now with people if they work for 6 months plus a day, you call it a year? Or
It's based on for the instructors, it's in here, it's half plus 1 day.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I would calculate.
Are you saying it's the same way it's done for the?
No, I'm saying that's the way we recognize a year and a half.
So how would you do the same thing for vocational? I mean, I think so.
That was my thought, is that we would really apply all the other standards that are set. We just wouldn't have this, you know, 10-day or 10-year max. That 10-year max would go away, right? And we'd be able to recognize, you know, total years of experience, like we would for any other person coming in.
Key difference with the school year versus calendar year. You're looking at work experience versus academic.
Why does it say that part of vocational certifications? Yes, other somewhere. In that time, since credit for 1 year's experience for each verified work experience that requires vocational certification.
Because what they've gotten in practice, the way that they've done that through vocational certifications is like.
Right, but is this referring just to vocation?
Yeah, just for the
Okay,
vocational.
I'm sorry, I was
Well, for 3
Yeah.
years or something under somebody.
I missed it.
You know what I'm saying?
And
Like,
welding and automotive and all those kinds of
Right,
things,
right,
most
I just,
specific.
I thought we were talking about any teacher.
Yeah, so it's just the vocational.
Right.
I got all my-
That there is a warning out, I don't know if your phone.
Thanks.
You guys will experience what we experience.
I know, I was in.
We all know the tornado drill. How to do it, so. We do. We'll teach you. You get underneath the desk, cover your head.
I'm just gonna leave it. Before they come, we're here just with
Okay, I think we're good on this.
Yeah, so we're good. And so if you have, any questions other than that, if not, then we can talk through. Oh, yeah. All right, so we briefly,
Looking out.
here we go.
She's
So
here.
I've got a subject matter expert that's going to address this memorandum of understanding. Essentially what it boils down to is that there's a grant that we have funding through the end of July, right? And in order to pay these individuals under the grant, we need to have an MOU in place. And essentially what it is we're looking to compensate 11 members of the unit as part of the district's turnaround leadership pipeline, right? This would allow for these individuals to receive training associated with going and learning how to be an administrator for our admin schools, okay? The compensation amount would be $5,000 in the form of a one-time payment for their participation in the training and that program. And so we've outlined the MOU I think here earlier. Just looking to sort of come to an agreement, so we move forward to pay those amounts out.
So I guess the assumption is these are individuals that are already in the pool to move into leadership positions.
Maybe, maybe not. So essentially, where I understand us to be is that they're current teachers. And so they're going to be advertising these opportunities at these individual schools. And then the principals will go through a selection process to determine who's selected to go into these roles, sort of like an open interview process. And then once they've determined who go through the program, that's when they would award the stipend. So it's open competition at this point down. These individuals haven't been selected.
What would happen if teachers participate in this program and then they get that money, but then they decide not to become an administrator? So it's just an incentive to get people in and hopefully they like it. And then what about if it's an open pool? And then in terms of like potential favoritism with at sites for determining who can participate, is there some sort of oversight or consideration for that to make sure it's a fair opportunity for all teachers?
There's going to be oversight provided by David Souls' office.
It's this particular school.
Yeah, it's for 3 schools. They're Bond Elementary, Riley Elementary, and Griffin Middle School.
The question was asked, is there a job description that reflect the requirements of the individual, how much time is spent on these things?
Well, one of the, like second to last bullet has the requirements. But as far as a specific amount of time, I would assume that probably will be determined based on how quickly they work through these different topics. Now, I do know that there is one module conference that they will be attending. I believe that's 3 days, but that can be, Mr. Souls has been kind of the forefront on scheduling that. But I'm not necessarily sure it's going to assign a specific number of hours at this point.
Are the modules like self-paced after the 3 days or whatever that food?
I assume that would be a good question for him. I mean, we can get clarification on that, but the introduction courses probably are self-paced with some guidance. I would hate to speculate, but I would assume that Mr. Souls will be involved in that training process as well.
It's also important to know this is a DOE program. It's being funded out of the DOE, so it's not something that the district is creating in itself. This is something that we're required to put in place, because we have some of these schools that are at risk, and so DOE makes this program available for us. So in the event that we have to intervene, that we have a pipeline to help lead these schools out of the.
Is it gonna be open to the teachers from those schools?
It's open there, yeah.
But is it open to everyone or is it open? to
My
just
understanding
those-
from talking with Mr. Souls is that it's gonna be open to everyone. And they'll go through a selection process.
It's just like this bullet, it just says it's requiring for teacher leaders, aspiring principals include committing to employment at a turnaround school. So to me, it says they can be wherever now, but then they're gonna need to commit to one of these 3 schools for the coming school year.
Correct.
So I got it.
And is the commitment for 1 year?
Like, is there a contract or something?
How many like are they signing?
I don't believe
something
that
or
there's
anything
no
like
contract that you're signing. I mean, I don't have any say.
that? Okay. Well, I
But
mean,
essentially,
so
so if they restate that, if they signed on to go work at one of these schools, then they would have their normal contract, that runs for it.
would that replace a teacher from that school in the staffing plan?
Yes. They pulled them out.
be a
Like,
teacher.
I would lose a teacher in the school.
So there's not an on-call teacher leader at the other school?
My
So-
understanding is they will go to one of those schools.
It would be a transfer.
It's not that anyone's-
That's, yeah, they would be a transfer, they would be a teacher leader at
At that particular.
that particular school and learn about these leadership programs during that time.
You're saying we got to kick out somebody currently in the school.
So like if they're fully staffed right now,
They're-
and you say
I
that you
can
have
tell
to
you,
replace
they
them.
are looking at these, they're not full
These
staff.
three schools were selected as not full staff.
They're not full staff.
There's schools of need.
Yes.
That was part of the
Leaders to
criteria.
staff. And schools that have been, my understanding, somewhat successful at a turnaround. So that's why they're going to this schools.
It's Bond, Riley, and Griffin. And so I happen to know that those are three of the schools that we have a hard time filling positions at. So it will also be used as a recruiting tool.
Okay,
But the guy going there, are they going there to teach, or they going there, what are they?
I
going
think, my understanding is that they're going there to be a teacher, but also to, it's sort of a hybrid role. They're learning how to be, they're also learning how to be an administrator.
I think just to help the group understand more about this process, so you guys applied for this grant, right? And we're awarded this amount of money. So in the absence of this, there's not a program that just exists that's gonna give $55,000 to teachers.
That's correct.
That's where this is at. So this is not money that came out of whatever and that we're not having access.
This
to
isn't our money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is-
wait, I'm
COE.
concerned about if this is a one-year grant,
Okay.
okay, and they take this, say, they accept this amount of money for to move there. It's not reoccurring.
Right.
It's just like,
Okay, it's fine.
they'll get this in addition to their normal salary for the 1 year. And then they can do what they want to do with it, you know, they can decide to continue on in the program, they could become an AP, they could, you know, they could continue to teach. Yeah.
So would they then, if they didn't want to stay at that school, they could then go back into the transfer process and try to transfer out? But they're transferred into that school if they aren't already an employee hired. Under that grant at that school.
How many teachers are having in the school?
There's 11 spots. My understanding is that there are three at each school, and then there's gonna be 2 that are like, that are more like floaters. They're not necessarily at one school. So I asked that question, well, there's 3 of them, but 11 slots. I'm not sure how that's gonna work, but that's what it explained to me.
If only
But they
those
have to be
spots
at-
are filled.
Have to get that.
Well,
We have to float
I
between
think
those.
2 would be considered like our program specialist type situation. Our program specialists are district employees, but then they're also in our schools helping our teachers with support.
So you have to, you can't split the money up differently.
It's specified for 11 $5,000 salaries. Yes, ma'am.
So if you only had 10 people who apply,
Still have 5,000.
it's still $5,000, and then the remaining money then would go back to the state.
Yes.
See what it is.
Yes.
So if you're taking a staffing position, a unit, a teaching unit from those schools to have, right? But that they're not really going to be a classroom teacher. They're going to be like a resource teacher, learning both roles. Wouldn't that put more class load to the teachers that are already at those schools? I mean, you're taking away a unit.
The average class size.
The class size would be increased to the other teachers at the school.
You're not taking it, right?
Teachers in the class.
I don't believe they're resource units.
She'll be a
She's
full-time,
talking
he or
about
she.
the
not just
two,
as a
she's talking about the
full-time
2
teacher.
floaters in
Yeah.
this scenario, right? Where they would be counted as an instructor, but it
Right.
has 0 students.
Right.
And so that affects the average.
No, I think they would be pulled off the top.
So you think those would not be included in the cut?
If you're taking, if a teacher at, the kids are calling, if the teacher at Cologne Lakes applies and they happen to be one of the 2,
the Clarence is still gonna have that, third grade teacher in their staffing plan. We're not taking that away from them. That teacher then just happens to, now from my understanding from Mr. Souls, happens to then be assigned to Mr. Souls Cost Center. As, just like with these program specialists, they're assigned to ESE, to district wide. They're not assigned to a specific center.
If you're gonna have two teachers that aren't gonna have students assigned to them, basically, they're not gonna help, that they're gonna help to me, so like training or working with extra like that, but what you're saying is without those two you're still gonna have two teacher units at the school.
At every school, we have a
Right,
number
yeah.
of, at every single school, we have a number of resources.
Right, the bridge the gap simply though is, say you had a school with only 3 teachers, 2 of them were these specialists and 1 was actually had a class of 30. You would say the average class size is 10. Because it's 30 students divided by 3 teachers, that's what they're getting.
But kids would have to be assigned to those teachers.
So,
That's
okay,
not how
so
that's
right now, in the example I just gave, you're not counting those specialists towards your class.
No, they're not
So
assigned
you have to have an
students,
instructor of
You have-
record for students and
They
then
have to have a
you're.
classroom assigned and the students assigned to them.
Along these lines, if you
Is
guys,
that how
if you guys want to dig into this a lot more deeply, then I'd be happy to schedule a meeting with you guys and Mr. Souls. I don't know if that's necessary, but, you know, what this is simply an opportunity for people within your unit to make an extra stipend while getting development opportunities.
And to clarify, they are the ones that are interested in it. It's
Yeah,
not,
of course.
we're not pulling, we're not, stealing or forcing. We are offering an opportunity for folks that would be successful as a turnaround administrator maybe in the future to still go that route, but also give them an incentive because it is a need and will
Yeah, sure.
be a need, as a requirement.
And they're open and competitive.
But there's sometimes when you don't have students assigned to you in focus, there are missed opportunities, especially when things come like, oh, we're gonna give $1,000 bonus for COVID and you didn't get it because you don't have any students assigned. So again, there are sometimes missed things because you don't have them.
But so all I'm getting at is when those things are missed, that we all.
So we're gonna take.
Today.
Oh, I.
Do you have a clean copy?
It's not some old, but, right.
Yeah.
I think that's-
There's others. Thanks. All right. So I mean, if you'd like for me to schedule the time, let me know. We'll sign up for nothing on that. Sweet.
Other than that,
So we'll sign this too. So actually I have to get it signed by Rocky, but.
How soon will you start to advertise this? It looks like the money has to be spent.
It's gotta be quick.
tomorrow. No.
Oh, you got it.
This will-
The money has to be spent by the end of
But if they
July.
haven't completed it,
I'll have like,
have you paid this?
But
Supplements only.
That's by the end of July, but we don't start teaching until August.
the August.
Yeah.
So how do I selfishly, I can turn all our paperwork by September, so. Oh, so you just have to submit a
You
plan?
have to have
No, I
to-
see on the financial side, I selfishly went and looked, I'm like, what's my dates?
Yeah.
To her point.
So I will acknowledge that this is sort of a late addition. to
Literally
our-
just got.
We just got it.
Yeah,
So we're just doing our very best to try and get it because it came from the.
Will they adjust dates because we're only signing it now?
They could.
And you're certainly gonna ask for that.
So in terms of advertising, is there a plan to advertise these positions district-wide?
Yeah. We'd like to do that.
And will that go through?
It'll go through, it'll be based at the school, though, we say district wide, so the school will do an advertisement for these positions at their school.
Those
Right,
three
Those 3 schools.
So
it'll
it'll
go
end up on
ads.
ATS somewhere that this is an
I say
opportunity.
that's the bad.
So the bond
Yeah.
principal has to advertise bond positions.
Can you put something Is something
Like,
you can put on the district
You know,
website, this is wonderful,
It'll say it.
just kind of put it in the air.
So it'll say bond.
People start asking about it.
I don't know that anyone knows, there's not a place where people necessarily go look for that kind of stuff, but we can put it on our HR website.
Well, like on the Facebook or
Go
something.
in.
Yeah, like, I mean, where we do news.
We'll have to get this.
You can have that, yeah.
To Brett's point, I don't think people log in every day.
What's going on in the HR website?
No, not specifically on that webpage.
I'm the only one who's done that.
I can see your track. I don't even do that. What are you talking All right, so this will, I'll get Rocky to sign it, and then you'll be at my, you'll be on this tomorrow, right? So I'll get to you. Yeah, and then from there, we'll get it. I think you're the board, my copy. All right. Sounds good.
And thanks to,
Leonard, do you have anything else to add?
I think that's it.
You away?
Bye, Leonard.
before we
Feel
leave,
better.
before we leave, I want to thank the district for this unique bargaining session. I know, Brett, you're probably more of a let's sign the articles and pass stuff kind of guy, and this is more of a let's talk about what's happening.
Let's talk about our feelings.
But ultimately, this allows future bargaining sessions to become expedited. I do think we needed what kind of was a large labor meeting with all the people involved who really know what's going on. So I'm very grateful for that. I think we'll expedite future bargaining.
So that said, we have bargaining plan for the first at 10 a.m.
10 a.m. That's a house.
And then from there.
Thank all your members.
Thank you, Leonard. So, and then from there, we can work on additional dates. Leonard's not available the rest of the month, but I think that in the interest of getting this done, we'll probably just proceed. And I'll consult on it.
All right, thank you guys.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.